Okay, I think I got it fixed now. He's right.
Good.
It was bad. I was not looking at the meter. Our Spreaker feed going out to the Radio Land was going good, but it was the stuff going on video wasn't working well. So people just sat there watching us and our mouths moving and no music. But anyways, we should be 5 by 5 now. Oh yeah, Rob gives us a
It's
big
just like
thumbs up.
any day in my household.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're talking. Nobody's listening.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's
Yeah.
how I feel sometimes.
Well, this is Stu and the Nunn, and if we don't go Bush League and we don't have tech issues, well, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
With that going, hey, we want to welcome again. I want to our guest, our sponsors, and Listen 9 Fight Company, Veteran Outdoors. Without them, we couldn't make this happen. And with that, I want to get right into our guest who's been standing patiently by. He's a previous guest of ours, someone I consider a good friend. When I get to DC, every once in a while, we try to link up and see and share a bite. And want to welcome back Mr. I'll say Lieutenant Colonel retired, but really Mr. Jason Emery. Jason, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be back on the show.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think your last appearance was your one and only public public media interview after the whole incident happened where you were allowed to finally retire with honors. Right? I think that was the last time you were on.
That's a good way to put
To finally retire or with honors?
the whole thing. I mean, it was just very, you massaged that.
Yeah, well, there was a lot led up to that. We could always dive back into that later, or we can go back and listen to it. But you have been enjoying the retired life, doing some great stuff. Being which I'll maybe want to get into in a little bit. Toby has a lot of experience with this, with media and TV shows, but being an advisor on a TV series there for a while. We haven't even had you on since you've been doing that, and probably doing a lot of other things. But no, but we've got a lot of things we want to hit on tonight. But one key thing is actually works out to be a pretty interesting date for you, doesn't it? This
Yeah.
anniversary. Yeah.
It's as you get in a winter kind of every year for me. What we did in Afghanistan back in '01. November 14th we went into the country. So yeah, when it gets to be November, it starts to just kind of all the memories start to kind of flood in. It's a strange time of year every year for me.
Yes, and for those that don't realize him, so Jason was the team commander of an ODA team, which is a Special Forces 12-man team, and his team, ODA 574, came into the southern Afghanistan in October, right? October 5th, I think, or October 6th. Does that sound right? Is that right?
Well, initially we went to Uzbekistan, and we were in isolation, so we were in planning. Isolation is what in Special Forces we call kind of the planning sequence you go through, where each team is separated from the other teams, and we basically gotten it through and we're waiting to see who we would link up with, and my team was sent on November 3rd down to Pakistan. So it was sort of a surreal thing where we got on a MC-130 and flew over Afghanistan to get to Pakistan. And then November 3rd, we linked up with Hamid Karzai and started working with him to figure out, who he was, what he wanted, what we could do for him, if there would be a mission. And as we developed the plan, we had a bunch of guerrilla leaders with him, so we actually infiltrated Afghanistan, I think around the 12th, the first time, grabbed his guerrilla leaders, flew in, dropped them off, and then came back out of the country. So again, this time was kind of weird because I was technically a veteran right after Veterans Day, so it's all kind of, as I said, those memories are pretty potent.
Even after all these years, it comes right back.
Oh yeah. doesn't really, doesn't really go away.
No, no. So, you took our, yeah, there's teams going in from the north. Of those who've seen the movie or heard about the horse soldiers, and there were ODA teams and CIA folks coming in from the north and linking up the Northern Alliance. Your team was the only one coming in from the south. And if anyone has never understood that story or knows about what ODA 574 went through, I can't encourage you enough to go find Eric Blum's book, The Only Thing Worth Dying For. Eric's a great author in his own right. I mean, he helped tell a great story, and you guys welcomed him in to do that, and it will leave you pretty open mouth and shell shocked to see what this team went through, and the team that Jason was part of, led, but also was part of. They were his brothers left and right, and what you guys sacrificed and went through, and to think about this being the day, and all these years later, 18 years later, of when you took what was going to be the president, the initial president and leader of Afghanistan, bringing him in the country and getting him in there to help turn over the South, and eventually what is considered the initial first win of Afghanistan, right? I mean, that's pretty much when the Taliban surrendered. So.
Yeah, the Taliban collapsing in Kabul, they retreated to Kandahar. That was sort of their last, the last stand that went out with a whimper because we're able to negotiate their surrender. So talked to them, and basically they surrendered. It was done, but the senior leaders, as part of the surrender, and we weren't a part of this on the American side. It's just it was something that I kind of expected, was that Karzai said that the senior leaders were going to retreat to Pakistan. And December 5th, 2001 was when Kandahar surrendered. And it was the end of that phase of the war, and then we basically went from, being insurgents to having to be counterinsurgents for the next 18 years.
Yes, yes. And little did the leadership of the Taliban know on December 5th that they would have, if they ever read the book afterwards, they probably are kicking themselves.
Yeah.
Karma played out there. They probably were after like, oh, who made that decision? Give up. But you have to read the book to figure that out, I guess, for those that are watching. But yeah, a very significant anniversary on this day, so we're glad you're able to come on and enjoy some of your and spend some of your Thursday evening with us. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about Afghanistan before we get into some of the other topics, some of the current political topics, and as we look back, you just mentioned it, right? We kind of talked about it. It was 2001. This is 2019. None of us, not you back then, not any of us that have been in Afghanistan or any of the time back in those days, could imagine do 2000. I don't think doing what we're doing. It'd be different to be like we're in Germany, Korea, we're kind of occupying and building up bases, training and stuff, but we're still engaged in active combat. What are your thoughts on that? Looking back.
One thing about that kind of is that when we were going in 01, it was not like Doolittle's raid, where we were back in our heels and we needed to do something, and so we launched B-25s off an aircraft carrier to bomb Tokyo. It wasn't intended to have any strategic effect beyond sending a message that we're not done. And I mean the problem with that it's so dependent on the people who report it. It's so dependent on the witnesses to the events. Yeah, we're living the history now, but even 18 years later, I feel like a lot of it's been lost. That's why Eric's book is so important. Was I wanted to make sure that we recorded for posterity as we knew it, the truth as well as we could. And as I recall, I mean, we were being thrown in just to do something. And I mean, it wasn't a suicide mission per se. We weren't told, hey, good luck, we don't think you're coming back out. But by all accounts from everybody, nobody really thought it was going to work. uh, you know, it was the best we could come up with. And it wasn't that they expected all these teams to die over there. They didn't really expect it to be a success either. It was really, let's just do something and we'll work it out. And the whole extent of our plan was get in, link up with the warlords, and do something. And that really was it. So when my team was going in, and we were in isolation, so I can't speak to what all the teams were talking about in isolation at the time. But I mean, we didn't know if we'd be gone for 6 months, if it would be a year. We thought we might go in, basically work behind enemy lines, so to speak, for about a year or so, and then maybe rotate out, maybe be there longer. But winning wasn't really even something that we were thinking about. We did do the planning based on Robin's Age, where we worked through, start a guerrilla army, turn them into an army, fight the Taliban, eventually force the Taliban to surrender. But I mean, that was years down the line. And instead, I mean, we got in and everything took off so quickly that it, just took a matter of weeks, and then the Taliban was surrendering. And I mean, that came as a shock to all of us. So, 18 years later, if you asked us in '01 if we'd be there 18 years later, we actually might have said yes. The irony of it is that in '02 you wouldn't have believed it, because in '02 it felt like we'd won. But in '01, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of hope that it was going to go well after the Soviet experience.
Jason, Toby here. It's so interesting. You bring that up about timelines. Because based on the unconventional warfare training that you and your team and that whole task force had, or the whole special forces community have, that being the bread and butter of that purpose, to not have a timeline, to go in and be like, okay, we're not sure how quick this is going to be. We could be here a year. Y'all were like, had the long game in mind, where America, we'll say general public, had, how long was Desert Storm? 100 hours? Right? So like, we have like these totally different perspectives.
Yeah, and
Let's
would.
History. Let's ignore, the British experience. Let's ignore the Russian experience. Let's ignore Hannibal's experience. Let's ignore all these historical things. Y'all were like, okay, we could be there for this amount of time, and you were like emotionally prepared for a year, and then get rotated out, hoping you sent enough of a framework or a groundwork or foundation for a follow-on force to do the exact same thing, so you can come back in 2 years and continue that work. And here we are, 18 plus years later, or 18 years later, and like, what a dramatic change and what a dramatic shift in the perspective of America. And when you guys were sitting in isolation there, I think the last thing you thought was that there'd be like a Hollywood type movie made about what y'all were doing. And it's obviously Hollywood's, not always close to accurate, but it's just really kind of cool to talk and think about like the difference in perspectives, of like the general public's understanding of how something goes down, and then the harsh reality of like, y'all were like thinking about, well, we could be there a year, and this is what we're going to be doing for a year, where, man, I can't even imagine doing that for 90 days.
I mean, it's what everybody signed up for, though. I mean, it really, when guys who go through the Q course, you could clump people a lot of different ways, but you had the guys that wanted to wear the green beret for what it represented, working with a local army, somewhat going native, really just getting down and dirty and disappearing into the woods with the Indian forces. And then you had other guys who, it was really more of an adventure, get in, do some time on an SF team, and then go to selection for other special ops units, and it was just kind of a stepping stone. But I think the majority of the guys that I was with anyway were folks that they got it, they understood the job, they enjoyed the job. It was a passion. And the thing that always stuck with me is that guys were obviously afraid of dying. That's natural. It's normal. Now, I'm not saying that people were, unafraid, but the more immediate concern everybody had was not getting a mission. It wasn't a case of, everybody take a number. I hope it's not me. It was the opposite of that. When we got into that initial queue, knowing that we were waiting to go in, you had obviously the concern with facing mortal danger. I'm not saying that wasn't there as well, but you also had a bit of relief that we weren't being left behind.
Fear of missing out's a
it
real
was really
thing.
an interesting balance.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Fear of missing out's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a different FOMO than than you get in social media. I mean, for us, it was and everybody knew guys who'd missed something. You'd have that friend that just missed the Gulf War, that other guy who just missed Panama. So it was kind of, there was always somebody to remind you that if you didn't get on this mission, you'd feel really bad about it for a very long time. So, as we were thinking this through, as we were, looking ahead at what this might mean, we figured we'd be gone at least a year, and it was, we had that rare opportunity to do exactly what we were trying to do. So it was really that crazy confluence of fear and relief at the same time.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about the competition. They're getting on the mission. I guess a lot of people don't realize that. I've always looked at it this way: that it's the team commander and the team sergeant that you've got to put the best plan you can put together to sell higher. That when you're in isolation, you have other teams that are also trying to get that mission. You've got to put together a solid plan that hits all the objectives, that is realistic, and you're competing against all the rest of them to try to win that spot, right? To win the pole position.
Yeah, and in theory, what happens is you're given very specific parameters. In theory, it would be, you're going to go in, you're going to link up with a warlord. We expect you to be downrange for a year. We want you to accomplish the following. Now make a plan for it. All that we got was, hey, you're going to link up with a warlord and find a way to root out Al Qaeda. Our job was to kill Al Qaeda. That was it. It wasn't nation building. It wasn't, it really was just very specific. It was render Afghanistan unusable as a terrorist safe haven. I mean, that's almost verbatim what the mission was. So here's a map of Afghanistan. Give us a plan. And, from there, we just had to really pull it out of our butts in terms of what we thought that would mean. And so for my team, we just went back to the basics of Robin Sage, and we planned it in terms of, okay, we'll go through a full unconventional warfare scenario. We'll link up, we'll build a military force, blah, blah, blah. So our plan was about as extensive as we could make it. We didn't think that that was what we'd be tasked to do, but sort of in the absence of any direct guidance, I figured it's better to overplan than underplan. And as it turned out, that was exactly what we ended up being asked to do, is link up with Karzai, who had a dozen guys, and work it out from there. So, thanks to my NCOs, we planned for the right war.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'd be amiss if I didn't mention you are also one of the, besides doing, all the other accomplishments you've done, being represented or being, in the book and highlighted in the book of The Only Thing Worth Dying For, but also you were a represented in the America's Army video game. And I do have my Jason right here. Let me turn around and grab him. You can't see him. But I keep him right behind me. Right in front, right behind a little Gears for Grunts patch. But I have my little Jason A. Marine. The only guy I know that has his own action figure. It sits in my office with the other 3 American Army action heroes. But I do every once in a while, man. I turn around and just talk to you and what would Jason? How should I handle this situation? None of them are close to what you had to handle. They're pretty minor, but you stay right here in my office, brother. I always look at you. So
I gotta say, I think about the irony of, hey, so we want you to go into Afghanistan, render it, unable to be a safe haven for terrorists. So you're gonna link up with a warlord.
Well, as we have seen in some of the, a good way to put it, in some of the more terrible countries around the world where they have evil dictatorships, lopping off people's heads, when the only terrorist is the leader, you don't have Al-Qaeda training camps. You just have a leader that commits genocide on a daily basis, and that was kind of the challenge that everybody had to deal with. You had a real ethical issue of Al-Qaeda's bad, but some of these warlords in their own way are just as bad. They're not on the terrorist watch list, but the things that they do to their fellow countrymen are pretty heinous. So it was something everybody had to be on guard about. And again, I can't overemphasize that there was no plan. It was just get in, link up, and work it out. So as teams are linking up with these warlords, the initial thing is they don't know if they're going to be sold out. Get on the ground, warlord immediately, either kills them or sells them to Al-Qaeda. I mean, that was a real fear. But then once they started working with the warlords, then it was just how bloodthirsty and vicious are these guys. And that was something that all the teams were also having to figure out on the fly. If you see a human rights violation, you are obligated to report it. The general guidance that you're given is don't intervene and get your team wiped out. Pull back from it, report it, and then we'll figure out from there how to deal with it. Do we leave you with the warlord? Do we pull you out? These were things that, to my knowledge, nobody ended up actually having to deal with that extreme a situation. There were executions that took place that teams were very intentionally kept far away from by the warlords they were working with, because the warlords understood the politics better than anyone, because these were pretty smart leaders. But yeah, that was another issue that teams were having to contend with.
Yeah, there's no doubt they did. And the whole, you got to trust them, but you can only trust them so far, right? But your choice. But
right.
You kind of shake their hand, but be ready to grab your pistol if you have to at the same time. Unfortunately, that hasn't too much since then. Hey, and so you've went on and done other great things. Other folks that were with you guys have been in documentaries and done some stuff. But another one of your I'll say battalion team members is running for office. I saw. getting into politics. I think he's running for senator. I brought this one out of the left field, didn't I?
Are, yeah, I don't think you want me to comment on that one.
No, I wasn't sure if you wanted to go there or not and give us some good sound clips. But yeah, Don Bolduc, who was, I'll just say you need to read the book. But yes, I see he is, now that he is retired, is running for office, and I assume you're not going to be helping on his campaign.
You know, I kind of remember that movie 300 when the Spartans are betrayed by, I always blank on his name, but they're betrayed by the guy that gives away the path.
Right.
So when they're about to be wiped out by the Persians, you basically have that line, "May you live forever," and the betrayer doesn't quite understand it, and then he does understand it. That's kind of my attitude. I hope he gets elected. I hope he lives a long, long life. May he live forever.
All right, that's a good analogy and comparison there. All right, so let's. I want to kind of get into some current things. We talked a little bit about the reflection on Afghanistan over the last 18 years, and still a lot going on there. But in today right now in today's political environment, one thing about this show, which is great, since about 2000, well, ever since the last presidential campaign started, we've never been short of content for this show to talk about, and never needed anything to come up with. It's pretty much provided for us every day on 24/7 news. But one of the current, obviously, the biggest thing right now is impeachment hearings going on, and you kind of, I will say, share some similarities to one of the folks that are being called, and I say similarities just because someone kind of put in a situation and kind of people vindicate or spread, have views and kind of take it as truth and stuff. As a witness is coming up next Tuesday, and that's Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a National Security Council staffer. He is a lifelong a military member, and Lieutenant Colonel, the same rank he retired as, expert, I guess, on Ukraine, and depending on which side you sit on or which news channel you watch, he's either a hero or a zero. And I guess, what are your thoughts on it? Because you were kind of put, definitely not the same related situation, but you were put in one where people had established opinions about you and what you were trying to do, and then they spun that narrative or to whatever into projecting that as truth.
Yeah, well, and I'll kind of, let's start with just sort of the basics of for the military, what's a whistleblower? What does it mean? I'll compare and contrast the situations between me and Vindman later. I had it comparatively much easier, and I'll explain why in a bit. But here's the root of it. As a whistleblower, you're legally protected. We've lived under the, see something, say something ever since 9/11. So, you kind of get, hey, if I see something that may be an issue or dangerous, I should report it to keep people from being blown up. That's the idea with regard to counterterrorism. And with whistleblowing, the idea is, if I see something that I feel is wrong, I should have a mechanism by which to report it. And if I go through this mechanism, my identity will be protected and I won't be retaliated. And so with regard to the first whistleblower that lit the fuse on all of this, there's an effort underway to reveal his identity or her identity. And that really is, to me, the beginning of this deeper fight that's starting to drag Vindman into it. Being an intel whistleblower is different from a normal whistleblower. So, I'll describe it this way. Let's say I'm in I'm in a brigade and I see a senior officer is, stealing money. We're overseas, and this guy's pocketing all the money that we're supposed to be giving out to the locals. I can report that pretty easily. There's nothing sensitive about it. There's nothing classified. It's this guy's a thief and I'm reporting it. And you could report it in different ways. You go through your chain of command, but if you're worried about retaliation, maybe the guy stealing the money is one who rates you, then you need to be able to do it anonymously so your career's not ruined. And if the guy stealing the money is popular and he rates you, let's say you're in a unit that you want to go back to someday. Like Special Forces is very small. If you're one of those 82nd guys that keeps wanting to go back to Bragg, the 82nd in some ways is very small. It's not like you could avoid these people if your identity is known. And so you go to IG, you report it, you do it anonymously, they investigate. As an intel whistleblower, it's very problematic. If my boss is doing stuff illegal in my perception, but it's classified, I have to report it in a classified fashion. In other words, I can't pick up a phone, call someone and say, hey, this guy's doing X, because I'd be violating classification just by saying it over the phone. So as an intel whistleblower, your protections are much more limited, and it's much more complicated to report a crime. So you had this guy who apparently was a part of the intel community. I won't say more than that, but that's the conjecture that's pretty much out in the news. He reported it through channels to the basically the IG responsible for intelligence. And at that point, that IG said, wow, we have something here that worries me. He took over, said that he believed that this was a legitimate complaint. Then he went to the Attorney General with it, and the Attorney General sort of tried to shut it down, and that was where things got really messy there. So you have a guy who reported things properly through channels, did it anonymously so his career wouldn't be over, and now they're trying to reveal his identity, even though the substance of what he complained about has been corroborated by all these other people publicly. So there isn't a need to even talk to this guy at this point, because everybody else is already reiterating what he said and the transcripts were released. One of those people is Nunn. So Nunn basically overlaps with the initial whistleblower, because the initial whistleblower's complaint included the call that Nunn was a part of. So Nunn lodged his concerns again through his chain of command there, saying that, I believe something improper happened. And then he was brought into, this greater investigation into what happened on the phone call. So what's interesting about it is the initial guy who complained was a whistleblower in about the most, in as clear a case of whistleblowing as you get. He went through the channels, he anonymously complained. He expected his identity to be protected. It got to the Inspector General, who said, yes, I believe that your complaint was valid and we need to investigate it. That was all about as straightforward as you could get. Nunn, meanwhile, didn't even blow the whistle in any kind of a covert sense. He didn't try to hide his identity or anything. He basically overtly went through his chain of command there and said, I think we have a problem. I don't know if he's even really going to be protected under whistleblower statutes, because he's kind of right on the line of being a whistleblower, just like I was. Nothing I did was, I didn't go through IG or anything until the retaliation. So it's kind of an odd category for Vindman. With Vindman, he basically just saw an issue and he reported it up the chain of command, and now he's being keelhauled for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For those in the listening audience that aren't familiar with like the military system, one of the things like super important to understand is like one of the whether you're a private or a cadet, second lieutenant, one of the very first things we're taught, if there's something wrong, do the right thing and stand up to it, correct it. And integrity is one of the most important of the core values that we have. And we're also told and taught and to understand that if you do see something and you do put it through the chain of command or go through the Inspector General's office, which is highly recommended as well, that you are protected from any form of retribution, or you should be shielded from retribution because you're trying to do the right thing, even if you're wrong. And it's like the term whistleblower like kind of bothers me in one sense because I want to make sure that, because it just sounds like this guy identified something and then was like, I'm compelled to do the right thing, or what my thoughts are to be the right thing, and just exercise the normal chain of command, notification process, like, and I don't know, I'm not communicating it well, but this is what we're taught to do, and this shouldn't be looked at as a taboo thing. It shouldn't be looked at as he's done something wrong, or there's been this violation of trust. There's been this, like I'm, like if I remember, being on a courtesy patrol in Korea and seeing a member of my chain of command doing something inappropriate, and like go figure, in Korea something like that happened.
No, there's no way.
And it's like, there's the, now it's an integrity question, and what's the right thing to do? Well, the right thing to do is like to correct that behavior, and I don't think that's whistleblowing. I don't think that's ratting, snitching. I think that's just adhering to the values that we were raised to believe are right. And
well, sorry to interrupt. I mean, the irony here is that the initial whistleblower probably felt this would be really explosive and ugly and wanted his or her identity protected. So that person went through the Intelligence Inspector General procedures for, hey, if you see something, how do you report it? And reported everything properly. The IG got it, said, yes, this is a proper report. I believe it needs to be investigated, and went from there. Vindman really took it on the chin. And I hate to contrast it because I don't feel that the initial whistleblower did anything wrong. But Vindman shows exactly why you need anonymity. That's kind of the irony here, is that Vindman reported it to the lawyer responsible for the National Security Council. Basically said, I think we have a problem here, and the lawyer at that point, did whatever the lawyer did to kind of control the situation. And eventually you got to where the transcript was moved to the CIA server there, or the sensitive servers there, and everything was kind of locked down. And that I think that's a fair way to sort of couch it. Is Vindman reported it. They made the decision to lock down the transcripts, and that was where it kind of ended. But Vindman in the public eye. Vindman is being accused of being a Ukrainian spy and everything imaginable because Vindman didn't attempt to hide his identity when he lodged his concerns. He just did his job.
No, and he's everywhere. He's on every picture in uniform. You know, like you can't hide much about a guy when you put him out front of you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It depends on what size you're on. I mean, you know, like everything in our current political environment, right? Depending on, you could switch from one side to the other. You could be hated by one side and then loved by it later, just depending on how someone feels about you. And you know, he served. He's served. You know, his entire career. I think his parents, his family's had a long service career. He's done great things. You know, obviously people are trying to pull apart, you know, if there's political leanings or if there's other agendas in there or things like that. And none of us honestly really know that. All of it's conjecture. But I imagine some of the same things happened in your case, right? Where people, obviously you had some retaliation and, you know, where people try to label you a certain way or put you in a category to you know, demean your whistleblowing and your opinions and things like that, which were not driven by anything but just what, you know, obviously what you felt, and I agree with, that were the right thing to do for this country and our citizens.
Well, and this is where, you know, for me, I was in a much easier situation. You know, for me, as I was heading towards retirement, you know, and one of my old bosses, Walt Pyatt, General Pyatt now, thing he taught me when I was his company exo in Panama was you work to the last day. You know, you don't take a year off, you know, as you're getting ready to retire. You don't take 6 months off as you're getting ready to PCS. You know, you work to the last day, and until you're on leave, you're on the clock. So for me, it was, you know, I had this hostage stuff going on, and I was going to work to the end on it. And I knew that I had to be very sensitive of all the parochial interests. I was rubbing up against the State Department, the FBI, the CIA, various entities in DOD. And so for me, it was, I knew someone was going to come after me. I just had to make sure that I gave them as little ammunition as I could to basically hurl at me, to shoot at me. And so I was talking to Representative Duncan Hunter for a while about reforms that were needed in the hostage recovery system, and it wasn't saying that any one entity was screwed up. It was, we're missing an entity to put it all together. You know, and I wasn't like, yeah, there was a guy in the FBI who definitely didn't care for me, but I never regarded this as me versus the FBI, you know, and I was always careful in all that to leave the institutions alone and say, look, it's not about these institutions, it's we're all stovepiped and we need an entity to break that stovepipe. We need something to kind of act as a fusion cell, and that's what we got. And when everybody, when this whole thing spooled up, I had that stupid boy. You know, I had this so-called war hero status that comes with it a lot of guilt because of all the blood that paid for that status. And so, I mean, there's a part of me that was fatalistic. There's a part of me that was, I mean, almost suicidal, but not in like a mortal sense. It was, you know, I want them to come after me. Let them tear me apart. I don't care. But I could use that status as sort of, you know, one final tool as a way to say, okay, look, I have some street cred. What I'm saying isn't wrong. Look at this issue. And in the year before it happened, because I kind of figured someone would come after me for probably a year to 18 months before, I really felt like, uh, I don't believe that, you should be making money on your name when, you lose people in the field. I mean, for me, I didn't want to prostitute that, you know, odd status I had. I had, cadets I taught who had been grievously wounded overseas, cadets who were deployed, and I felt like it was sort of the last thing I could do is at least, in a professional sense, kind of jump on the hand grenade. And what was crazy about it was, yes, it happened. It turned out that General Legier, the G2, hated Hunter and tried to come after me when a guy at the FBI complained to her that I was talking to Hunter. And I told my chain of command I was talking to Hunter. None of this was done discreetly. It was all in the open. Every time I go talk to Hunter's office, I told my boss. I mean, for me, as I say, it wasn't really whistleblowing because I was working with Hunter to try to enact a reform and create something that didn't exist. But Legier hated Hunter for going after her on some acquisitions issues. And she basically came after me as a way to get to him. And at that point, that was where I could play kind of that war hero card and kind of throw it on the fire, throw my reputation on the fire, and really just say, fuck it. And I kind of had this weird feeling that, hey, when it's over, let everybody hate me, I don't care, but maybe we'll at least fix this. But what ended up happening, to my surprise, though, was everything actually worked out pretty well. Enough people knew me that they knew I wasn't full of shit. They knew that if I was making this big an issue out of it, I probably knew somewhat what I was talking about. And instead of my reputation being in tatters and everybody, calling me a traitor and a piece of shit, basically doing to me what they're doing to Nunn, it was the opposite. And I'll admit there was almost an odd bit of disappointment that I wasn't hated afterwards because of that survivor's guilt. That action figure was made for a recruitment drive as our army was falling apart because of Iraq. I mean, that was really a recruiting tool. It was necessary, I get it. But, I mean, it all came at a personal cost because, compared to the guys on my team, I mean, I had some shrapnel on my leg, issues with PTSD, but I'm not missing a limb. Obviously, I didn't die. There's a lot of survivor's guilt. And I really was kind of wanting to jump on a hand grenade over the hostage stuff. I really just wanted it to kind of destroy everything. But it had the opposite effect. People respected what I did. There was really, there was such a groundswell of people on my side that, it really was kind of a moving experience. And when it was done, we won. We got all the reforms. I retired. Walt Pyatt, who I mentioned, came in and it's the G3, who I technically worked for, even when I was suspended from work and just hanging out. He made sure to get me a Legion of Merit when I retired. I mean, the story for me ended so well. The only thing I would say is that, with the label of whistleblower, there are certain jobs I just would never have again. There are people that would see Jason Amring whistleblower, no matter what they thought of me, they wouldn't hire me because I'm a whistleblower. It's that mark of Cain. I don't want those jobs. I haven't pursued those jobs. But I know that it's something that does limit what I could ever do again because I will always have been a whistleblower, even though, as I say, it's kind of a marginal thing for me. In Vindman's case, kind of like me, he didn't even really blow the whistle. He just reported through his chain of command something that he thought was wrong. And now he's a Ukrainian spy, overweight piece of shit that can't wear his uniform right. And I don't know what he does after the army, but he'll always carry that with him too. The difference is, he didn't have that extra card to play, and that's where I really feel for him. Because, what's he going to do after, depending on how bad his reputation is trashed? I mean, it could really screw up his life. I didn't pay any toll like that. I mean, for me, when I retired, I wanted to retire. I did. I still consult, still do hostage stuff. Randomly, I've been working on different TV shows as a consultant. I mean, for me, my story ended well, but I fear for people like Nunn, let alone that other person who, they're trying to out right now because their professional careers are ruined. Their reputations are ruined. They're screwed. For me, I almost wanted my reputation and everything to be ruined. As I say, it was that survivor's guilt. Instead, for me, it had the opposite effect. But it's clear that for these guys, I mean, they're screwed.
Yeah, it is, especially if the names get out there. Like I say, I imagine in the business world, right, the whistleblower has the same connotation as snitch, and regardless of
Yep.
why or what, I mean, that's just has that impression. Hey, you talked about a couple of the TV shows. What is I just don't know off the top of my head, but what's the one you've done like the last couple seasons on? And is that one still going?
So I did. I worked on Taken.
That was it. Yeah.
Then I moved over after Taken went off the air. I went to work on something called Magnum PI. So I've been
Just a little
on the
something.
second season.
Are you,
Yeah, it will show out in Hawaii.
well, that's your old
So I
stomping
got
ground.
in, yeah, exactly. It's a lot of fun because it's a special ops guy in Hawaii, and I'm a special ops guy from Hawaii. So I've been working on that for the last couple seasons, and then I came in and helped out with the third season of Absentia, which is a fun show. It's kind of a psychological thriller. Had a lot of fun with that, working on that for a season. And I helped out with I'll just say a Christmas show in development right now. I won't say more since I probably can't, but it was kind of fun, kind of a military themed kind of Christmas show for one of the networks. I'm kind of excited to see what they do with that. It's fun.
Nice,
At the
nice.
same time, I'll do consulting on hostages, so you have that good mix of the kind of the bitter and the sweet. Because the TV stuff is just kind of it's fun. It's great working with the writers who are pretty amazing. I've been really excited because I look at these writers on IMDb and I'd be like, oh man, I've seen every show this guy or this gal worked on. It'd be fun working with them. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now you got, I think Taken, you got some cameos on, didn't you? Or have you been getting cameos on a few of these?
No. So, well, Taken I did. So I work very specifically with the writing team. So I work on stories. I work on scripts. I'll get into the essence of who a character is. So it isn't just this person wouldn't be using a musket. This person would be using an M4.
Right.
It isn't just the technical stuff. It would be given this person's background. These are some things that that this person might be thinking about. So as this person is put into a scenario, here's what you might consider.
Right.
You
How
know,
how they would think and talk and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean the challenge is, my job is to understand the intent of the writer. If the writer's intent is character A needs to kill character B, I can't say, well, you shouldn't kill character B. That's not it. It's, well, when A kills B, why don't you try it this way instead of that way because this should be more realistic. That sort of thing.
Right, right.
It's and it's fiction. It's supposed to be fun. So, I understand a lot more now when you see things in movies and you're like, why'd they do it that way? I kind of get how the sausage is made now, and it's just a lot of fun.
So you mean the war movies and our movies when we all go to the theater and we just rip it apart because they wouldn't the EOD guy wouldn't be running through downtown Baghdad in a hoodie trying to rescue somebody, right?
Well, and that's where the limits to what I can do versus what they want to achieve in a story. So, it's not Tom Clancy unless it's Tom Clancy. Although Jack Ryan isn't really Tom Clancy either, but that show. But you have to understand what they're going for. If they're, and most of these shows want a certain level of realism, but beyond that, they have a story they want to tell, and
right.
I have to respect that.
Yep.
And so it's really kind of that compromise. But it's a lot of fun. It's really, I don't find myself frustrated by it at all. It's the opposite. It's working with these writers and kind of enjoying watching their process of storytelling and kind of helping where I can to get it moving along. And then occasionally working with the actors, and the actors are they're all a lot of fun as well.
Good deal, man. What a crazy career in life you've had so far. From what you've done in the military, we didn't even cover we covered just a tip of the iceberg of what you've done and just what happened 18 years ago. But all you went through your retirement, and then you're still pretty active in a lot of areas, both in the entertainment industry and the real world, as you talked about. Hey, we've had you on for an hour tonight. It's been great. It's awesome having you back on. Is there anything we didn't cover or highlight? Anything you want to spotlight for our viewers and listeners that you just want to let them know, or any departing words before we let you go?
No, I just good catching up with you guys. I doing interviews and stuff. I've largely tried to sort of retire from it all, but it's always fun talking to you guys. This is just sort of different. It's more like talking to the family, so it's just good catching up with you all.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We get that a lot. We try to make it comfortable, and it's like if we could all be sitting around a room together and having a beer, that's exactly what we'd be doing. But unfortunately, we can't always get co-located like that. But yeah.
Well, next time you're in town, we'll grab dinner, catch up.
Yeah, it's been a while. I haven't wanted to bug you. I come into DC a lot, but I don't want to bug you every single time I'm there. But I am coming back that way in a couple weeks, so I'll ping you and let you know the couple days, and I'm going to be here next. And we gotta link up.
Yeah, I'll be in town. I'll see you in the new house. I'm living outside Old Town now, so
nice.
You can see the new hood.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, Jason, thank you so much. And for those listening and watching, you've been listening to us talk to Lieutenant Colonel retired Jason Amering. And if you want to learn more about some of the things he's done in his military life, just a little bit of it, go check out Eric Blum's book, The Only Thing Worth Dying For. Watch some of the shows he's been on and talked about and helped out with. And Eric, thank you so much for coming on tonight, buddy. It's good talking to you, and I hope to see you in a couple weeks.
Have a good night.
All right, have a good night, man. All right, there we go, everyone. Mr. Jason Amering, and boy, I mean, we only touched part of it, Toby. The guy.
Yeah, that was an iceberg that we only scratched the tip of the surface on. Well, obviously a lot of people with the movie, 12 Strong and all that stuff, I have recently, and with, this being the anniversary of, Afghanistan, of Karzai going in, so there's a lot of, big things, but that's really not even, his work with hostage stuff is amazing. I mean, his
we didn't even get into that. I mean, what he was involved with the Bergdahl,
dealing with American hostages, to include very famous ones.
Yeah.
And in his role in like blowing the whistle on, why some of that was bad. Uh, Super important. And then what happened with, him talking, with, Duncan Hunter, Representative Duncan Hunter at the time. But no, like we didn't even, scratch the surface of Jason and what makes him so awesome. But very timely, with everything in the news about whistleblowing. But before we go, I know we've been on for a minute. Man, there's something that's just been like bothering me, and I have hair now, so I can't do the bald man rant.
But you can do the white goatee rant.
I'll do the ball cap backwards rant.
There we go.
Just created a ball cap backwards rant. Man, something happened in Canada in the past week and a bit that's just been ridiculous. But it's not just happening in Canada; it's happening all over. And I don't always like feel the need to say something, but this is just one of those things. I was thinking about doing a video about it. I'm trying to figure out the best way, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to rant for a few seconds. An icon in the Canadian hockey media landscape, a guy by the name of Don Cherry. Most people are familiar with his commentary of Rock'em Sock'em hockey. He wears the loud and obnoxious
sport coats and
suits, sport coats. He's kind of like the John Daly, or John Daly wishes he was the Don Cherry of golf, I guess is a better way of saying it. And the other day, Don Cherry, while on air on Sportsnet, the channel that he's worked for, and on the Hockey Night in Canada program that he's been a co-host of for 38 years. All right, so like not 3 years, not 8 years, but 38 years. Like almost the length of our lives. Like as long as I can remember hockey, I can remember Don Cherry. He's an institution. I don't want to call him a national treasure, but he basically is. He is definitely a big part of the landscape. And he just got fired from that job because he referred to the public at whole, at large, as disappointing for their lack of support for the veteran and military community.
They weren't wearing the red poppy.
So Canada, along with the United Kingdom and the majority of the Commonwealth, the 11th of November is not Veterans Day, it's Remembrance Day. And Remembrance Day is in honor of the armistice that was signed on the 11th minute, the 11th hour, and the 11th day of the 11th month. And that was the armistice that ended the First Great War. To signify that, lest we forget, the words, lest we forget, is demonstrated visually by the wearing of a pink poppy. And this is in reference to the poppies that flourish in Flanders Fields and the many Canadian, American, British, Australian, New Zealand cemeteries throughout France and Belgium and these other locations in Europe to which great North American and Commonwealth and European lives were lost to defeat evil. There's a very famous poem in Flanders Fields, the poppies grow, fly the crosses row on row. And so we wear a red poppy in November so that we don't forget the sacrifice. Much like in America, we have designated an entire day in May, the last holiday, the last long weekend in May, so that, Memorial Day, we do not forget the cost of what we have. And all Don Cherry did was kind of rant a little bit about how people you people, was the terminology that, he utilized. Unpaid producers already got my quote up here for me. Rob's awesome. you people love. They come here, whatever it is. You love our way of life. You love our milk and honey. And it was taken as a anti-immigrant, anti-establishment, and that's not what it was. Uh, what he was saying is simply for us to enjoy, all of us, because we're all sons and daughters of immigrants. This is North America. Anyone that thinks anything other than that, needs to like go check their history. And we're all sons and daughters of immigrants. And I'm pretty sure that someone's gonna be like, "Well, I'm Native." Like we can get into Aboriginal like arguments as well historically if you want. But the bottom line is, no one originated here. We all came here, and we all enjoy these freedoms and these liberties. And America enjoys a lot more than Canada does, and clearly Canada's not enjoying them right now because we have this culture of canceling, this cancel culture where I don't like what you said, I'm going to get you fired. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to complain. And the knee-jerk reaction is to fire somebody, get rid of them, ruin their careers, ruin their reputations, ruin their lives because you disagree with something they say. And, the bottom line is like this, he was 100% correct. And, we tarnished a good man's reputation. And when I say good man, I don't know anything about him personally. I mean, he could be a real asshole. I don't know. But the bottom line is, what he was saying is we should be grateful for these things and we should show more respect. I believe, like, the American flag is not a symbol of hatred. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Those are very profound words. Like, lest we forget wearing a poppy. These are not offensive things. These are wonderful opportunities to say thanks. Too easy do we forget to say thanks for our food. Too easy do we, forget to say thanks for the access to healthcare, the best healthcare in the world that we have. Yeah, we bitch about its cost, but we have it. Like we forget too easy what was paid for us to have this. The bold and audaciousness of the people that got on boats and blindly sailed across the seas to find and to figure and do this. We're just gonna like cancel that. And shame on us for being that society. Shame on us for allowing and promoting that. Like if you don't like what someone says, like, and it offends you, something that my dad said that I will never forget. And I'm going to leave everyone with this. If someone says something that actually really offends you, that means that it's stricken a truth within your character. If something like hurts your feelings that much, it's probably because it's calling out a truth within your character that you need to address. And so if you don't like the fact that Don Cherry says you people like milk and honey, well, that's because you do, and you suck because you don't want to respect the reason why you have it. And that's all I got.
No,
so
man,
if it offends you, it's because it's true,
right.
And you need to look at yourself. That splinter is more of a piece of lumber.
If it doesn't affect you, you don't care, right? If somebody looks at me and says like, "You got the worst hair I've ever seen," and like, okay, whatever. If somebody doesn't know me and says anything they want about me, like, okay, I don't care. But it, if it's true, then maybe take a little heart to it. But look, he expressed his opinion, and his opinion was, you're here enjoying these freedoms in Canada. It could be freedoms in America, either one, right? But you're enjoying these freedoms, and all we ask is that, for the month of November, and dude, you've heard me say it, man. I've talked about it with you, I've talked about it with our good friend Matt Goss, and a number of people all the time. I wear a red poppy in the whole month of November. A lot of people think I'm Canadian because in America we don't do it, right? We recognize one day.
Yeah.
And
they're hard to get here.
Like I have a handmade one that I ordered that's handmade because you'd always get the cheap little ones from American Legion and they fall apart. So I have a handmade one, hand stitched. And for the month of November, every time I wear a sport coat or something, it's on. right? And people think, oh, and they think you're Canadian. When I went to the Bills game a couple weeks ago, I saw a lot of people with them. I'm like, nice poppy, and they just like we instantly bonded, right? Because and I tell people, I wish Americans did what Canadians, Brits, New Zealanders, Australians all do, which is wear that thing for the entire month. You recognize the freedoms and everything, not just one day when there's some sales, but for the entire month of November. That's one place Americans, we just miss the mark. We don't do it. I do it, whatever. And I tell them, nope, I'm American, and I think we should be wearing it all the time. And, for the same reason Don Cherry talked about, honor to appreciate those that gave us all these freedoms. It's not much to ask. Put something on your lapel or on your coat or something like that. And, for Sportsnet to become so PC that they fire. I mean, he is a cornerstone of their institution. I mean, you don't think of hockey without thinking about Don Cherry. You don't think of him without the coats and the suits and his analogies and his sayings. I mean, he's just he's a piece of it.
No, I mean he is more popular and with greater longevity than any other sportscaster in any sport. I mean, like if you want to compare him to an American Harry Carey guy, like in baseball, but
Howard Cosell, Harry Carey, I mean, it's at that level, right? I mean,
but actually bigger because those were really regional guys. Don Cherry was continental,
right?
So like I feel like even comparing him to rhythm service because he covered it for multiple countries, multiple like he was an overall like Harry Cosell's I think a little better, but in terms of anyway I do.
Yeah. Well, hey, that was a good rant. It was a little long, but that's okay. It was well worth it, and it was needed. Speaking of which, wow, look at that. Buffalo to score 3-3, tied it up, 6:25 left in the third against Carolina. So
yeah. Well, we better wrap up so you can watch them lose.
Yeah. I watched the goalie Carolina take a puck like right to the neck, dude. It was you don't see goalies drop to the ice that often. That was happening in the first period there. Yeah. So some hockey on. Toby, great show. Great. Thank you, Jason, for coming on. It was awesome having back. Sorry we've been away for a couple weeks, everybody. We're back. Of course, we'll be back next week, Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, here on Stu and the Nunn. Keep an eye on things. Hope you're starting to get ready for the holidays coming up. And deer season starts this weekend in New York, so you know where I'll be. I gotta get you some more jerky. So. All right, well, everybody, you guys have a good night. Thank you for joining us and giving us some of your Thursday evening here, almost an hour and a half worth. We started a little bit late, but if it isn't, we don't have tech issues, then it's not still in the night. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much. Thanks, Toby, and we hope everybody has a good night.
Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Thank you again, and have a good night.